bounced it back in his hands, ran over
technical director today. I am both without a computer and without headphones. They're with my car with the other half. Bye-bye. See you. So here it is. We're on the eve. We're just a few hours away from the first Stanley Cup playoff game between the Dallas Stars and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, for those of you that are Leaf fans, we'll first start by putting them to bed. We haven't had it. David and I spent a lot of time talking about the Maple Leafs in the past, and we'll just give it a cursory thing. What we've learned from the Toronto Maple Leafs is that they took a step back this year because the play-in round was essentially the series that would get you in the playoffs. The playoffs didn't start until that first round was out of the way. So it was sort of to figure out who's in the playoffs, giving everybody a fair enough chance to be in there. Teams like Montreal that wouldn't have made the playoffs, I think it would have been a pretty safe bet. And when you're selling at the trade deadline, that's a pretty good clue that you've sort of said, this isn't one of those situations where it's addition by subtraction. This is, let's start getting some chits for the new season that's coming up, and let's get us some young talent, trade in some of our experienced players for younger talent. With the Leafs, they didn't make the playoffs, David. What reason do you give? I give the simple reason that COVID-19 didn't directly undermine the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I think it's fair to say the flat cap did, because Kyle Dubas took a very big chance on the cap going up. His whole salary structure of his team was based on the fact that the salary cap was going to go up. And ever since the pandemic hit, and ever since a flat cap has been clearly evident, they, more than any other team, I think, are out on a limb. And I think what we saw was basically a team that wasn't quite ready to assert themselves as to what they would be, because quite frankly, the pandemic affected them, I think, the most out of all the teams.
I going into this, I thought the Leafs would have been in the best shape. One of the best shapes out of all the teams for the pandemic for a couple of reasons. One being health, because before the pandemic hit, the Leafs were hit with some really tough injuries, and especially on their blue line. Like they had a lot of guys that were hurting there. So I thought the pandemic gave them time to at least get those guys back into shape. But I think, and then, they had a lot of guys in at training camp when the restart happened, when teams started to welcome guys back. Most teams didn't have all their players on the ice right away. The Leafs were one of the first to have everyone back in town. So you thought, okay, getting them up to speed was good. Where I think what went wrong for them going into that qualifying series against Columbus was that Columbus has, like a lot of teams, I put Columbus, I put the Islanders, I put even somewhat like the Dallas Stars. Maybe the Dallas Stars are probably maybe in a tier just above the Islanders and the Blue Jackets. But I would put like the Blue Jackets, the Islanders, and even the Canadiens. Those three teams where nobody really was giving them a chance going into these playoffs, because they rely on something other than talent. They rely on good goaltending, which all three of those teams got. They all got elite goaltending. All three of them relied on a style of play that frustrates teams with skill. In this case, the Leafs. And, the Leafs just couldn't. They did more, I think, to themselves in not making the proper adjustments. Especially in that Game 5. That Game 5, what bothered me the most was they started off with the Matthews, Marner, and Tavares line. I understand why they did it. They tried. We got to get to these guys early. We got to try to get one quick. But then what happened was the trickle-down effect, where the other guys that were forced to make the big adjustment, because it's very easy to put Matthews, Marner, and Tavares together, and they're going to perform. They had a good amount, really good chances. But the other guys weren't given that opportunity to gel and it's a lot harder for those guys. And that's where I had the issue, is the trickle-down effect of that you saw. And as the game goes on, this is what happens to a really talented team. When they get frustrated, they seem to forget that there's other ways to have an impact to try to get things going. Columbus played a more simplified style that worked for them. The Leafs tried, I think, too hard to rely solely on talent and not enough on you got to do things differently in the playoffs to generate scoring chances. And that's why I think that's the big reason why they were out. And also they ran into probably one of the hottest goaltenders from that early stage of the restart. Columbus was very fortunate to get some really good goaltending in that series, and even in the series against Tampa where they still lost, but their goaltender made it very tough on that team as well.
I on the other hand think that to be clear, the reason I say the pandemic was a disadvantage to the Leafs is because they ended up being the favorite against Columbus. And the last thing the Leafs needed was to be a favorite at anything, in my opinion. And a team like Columbus, they fed off that being the underdog. And they really weren't. These were two teams that were very close in the standings, right? So it wasn't a situation where this was a clearly dominant team over another team. It was just one that had the edge during the season by a point, I think it was, if I remember correctly.
It's very close.
I apologize for not having my statistics right. I don't have my computer, and I wasn't able to refresh my memory as to some of the important factors. And so the best I can recall from what happened is the simple fact that the pandemic created a situation where the Leafs became a favorite, something they really, really didn't deserve to be. Not only that, something they didn't need to be. They I think had a lot more pressure on them, and I believe you're right that when they put all their eggs in one basket, they created a situation where if those eggs did not produce, the odds of someone else producing were less by virtue of thinning out the rest of the lines, right, to create that big line. The Leafs have suffered from this year, last year. The biggest problem they have is that they have this reputation for being a run and gun team, a team that can score. And when you say that, the opposition comes in respecting them as that kind of team. Mm-hmm. And they key on ensuring defensively that the Leafs can't do anything. And then you add the fact that the Leafs are not that strong defensively, that if you put some pressure on their defense, you're going to get opportunities. So this team that they played, the Columbus Blue Jackets, deserved to win. Yep. I don't think they had the better goaltender. I'm not unhappy with the way Anderson played. People talk about that last goal because every series that the Leafs have lost with Anderson in the net, there seems to have been a goal that ended it. But, prior to that goal ending it, this is a team that, again, you're going to have to help me with your computer. If I'm not mistaken, if memory serves, I think they only had 5 or 6 goals in the series. So, they didn't have that many goals in the series. And unfortunately, to win, you have to score. They were shut out twice. Yes. That I seem to recall distinctly.
They were shut out in game 1 and game 5.
They lost 3 games, 2 of them by shutout. That is the Toronto Maple Leafs power play talking to you. This Leaf team at the very beginning, before they were given all their pay, before they went to the pay window, everybody talked about the best power play in the National Hockey League. About a half a season into that, they became a team that could not score on the power play. This is a team that lacks the ability to score goals. When that's your only strength, that's not fair. It's not that it's not its only strength, but when that is your strength and your defense is not near as good as your offense, and your offense doesn't do what it needs to do, which is score, you're not going to win many playoff series.
No, and what I think will happen, especially with the Leafs case, is yes, the power play wasn't good. But at the same time, what Columbus realizes that offensively they can't match what the Leafs can do. So the best bet they had was, okay, we will try to weather whatever attack the Leafs have. Try to really make sure that we limit the advantage that they have offensively and capitalize on any chances, any misplays that the Leafs had. I mean, I looked at game one. Yes, like Anderson was great in that game, but the goal he let in wasn't a great shot. A goalie's going to give that up once in a while. You kind of hope your team picks you up as well. So that's why I didn't give it all the blame to Anderson, because your team should try to get an offense like that, should not be shut out like that. And then, I look at game 5, and people brought up that goal he let in game 5. Well, it doesn't help that the guy's left all by himself in the corner and is just allowed to walk to the net like that and score. So Columbus had a lot of those plays go their way. The Leafs did not. And in a series, and in a lot of, if we've seen in the playoffs, a bounce can go your way. And if you capitalize on those chances, you are going to most likely win the game, because the margin for error in the playoffs is a lot smaller than it is in the regular season, Frank. And I think was an issue with Toronto.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about, it's all about the ability to have a system that allows your team to play the kind of defense that allows your offense and your goaltender to do their job. The problem with the Leafs, and on that goal that you're referring to, that last goal, there was a Leaf defender back there, and the announcers, and I kind of agree with them, I don't think Freddie saw him in the corner. No. Because that puck got stolen at the blue line, and the Columbus Blue Jacket was literally below the goal line when the puck was stolen. Anderson lost the ability to know that guy was there. And the Leaf defender, or the Leaf player that was there, didn't even act as if that guy was a threat. So Anderson didn't even get the attention drawn to that guy, if you follow what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. On the ice, there's a lot of chatter all the time. Players talk. They tell each other what's going on. They literally, on that play, Anderson got hung out to dry. I'm not blaming the player that was in the zone at the time, but the fact is he didn't raise the profile that there was. He didn't look like there was a Columbus. I almost think that guy didn't think that guy was there either soon enough. So when you get that kind of play that's made in a low percentage play at the blue line that leaves you to be intercepted, you're looking for trouble. You said it yourself in what you said. When you make a mistake in the playoffs, it really, really can come back to bite you. And that was a terrible mistake in losing the puck at your blue line when everybody else except for one player is outside the zone. That is the kind of thing that the Maple Leafs did this year, and I think that's why they were on the outside looking in during the playoffs.
Yeah, and they were, and this is another case, third year in a row, they push it to that final game, and they couldn't get the job done. We're talking about a team.
Is that confidence? Is that confidence, David? Is that confidence or a lack of ability?
I think it's just, it's too much. I think it's too much relying on one or two players to get you over that hump. I also just think it's a team that's not grasping. In those games, you need to play a certain way. You need to realize that the margin for error is so small that you can't be taking. Look, you want to get your chances. You want to push the game, but you also have to realize that the mistakes you make can come back to haunt you very quickly. And I think that's part of the thing is, they get, once things start to kind of not go their way right away, there seems to be a little bit of self-doubt that creeps in, frustration. The last thing you want to be in those certain situations is frustrated, and that costs them.
All right, let's end this little Leaf talk on what they need to do, in your opinion. I'll give you in 1 minute. I'll give you in 1 minute what the Leafs need to do. They need to make the big move that stops them from nibbling at the problem, which is the cap. They have to make a big move. They have to remove a contract. They have to remove a big one, whether it's Marner or Nylander. It's going to happen, in my opinion, because the the problem is they lack depth. And I think that's what Columbus showed Toronto, and what every other team that plays Toronto in the playoffs, like Boston or Washington, their problem has always been depth. And the only way to resolve that is to have enough money to spread it around a little more equally to the rest of the players on the team to ensure that you have the kind of talent and depth that you need. The only other thing I can suggest is to find 3 players that are willing to be paid the league minimum, that have a lot of experience but still have some stuff in the tank. I think Spezza was great in the playoffs. 3 guys like him on that line at the league minimum, they're going to need, because quite frankly, they need really good players that can play tough, players that understand the playoffs on the team, and they can't afford to pay guys who would draw that kind of salary more than the league minimum.
I would agree, and I think a better way to explain that is you got to trim the fat. You have to look at your roster, look at the guys who are making a certain amount. I think what they did with Kapanen was right. They looked at a guy that's making, just over $3 million, and who is almost invisible in the playoffs. You can't have that. I look at a guy like Andreas Johnsson. He's making over $3 million. Is he going to have that impact that you need? He's a guy you can part with if you can find someone to replace him for almost less than even half, more than half. I think the Spezza move was the right move. I look at the big thing going into this offseason is COVID-19 is going to have a very hard challenge on a lot of teams financially. We know the Leafs are not troubled to pay guys. They're having the trouble to fit guys in. So you look at a guy who's going into UFA that, you say we might not be able to pay you a lot, but what we can pay you is more of a guarantee than what other teams can give you. And I think that right there will be something that they can take advantage of if they can get the right pieces to fit the puzzle.
Yeah, they've got their work cut out for them. And just as a little note, for those that think the Leafs are the only ones with this kind of issue, if you look at the Arizona team, they're in the same bind as the Maple Leafs, and they've got a lot of players that they ironically have players that they've paid like Kessel, they paid bonuses to, where the actual pay is not that much. You're hoping with teams like that, if the Leafs are going to do something, they're looking for a partner that doesn't have the cash but has the cap space. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be a lot of teams that are looking at that, because a lot of teams are actually, there's a lot of talk that the majority of the league teams are trying to get under 70 million. So, a lot of them are already near there. They're already at that ceiling. So there's going to be some interesting trades. There's going to be some interesting moves. And there, of course, is going to be a draft next year, and teams, organizations are getting prepared for that. Let's move on to this Stanley Cup series. I'll start by saying this, David. You have 2 teams I will put in the same boat, and that is, these are 2 teams that are basically reclamation projects when the season started.
Yeah.
You have Dallas that had their star players that were taken down by their owner, dressed down deeply by their owner, being the Dallas Stars. And then you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, who went out in 4 straight, as humiliating a way to go out for a team that finished first overall. And now these 2 teams find themselves in the Stanley Cup Final. I think it's great, because it gives the rest of the teams hope, no matter how dire a situation they're in. And the way the Stanley Cup playoffs work is, if you have the right coach, the right goalie, and the right system, and the players that know how to play that system, you can make it to the Cup if you can survive all the rounds required to get there. And I mean by health, as far as health is concerned.
I think what these 2 teams show is that, especially in Tampa's case, you might be looked upon as a great team, but until you go through some sort of adversity, tough challenges. Tampa had a very, I think the first 2 rounds, they made it look a little easier. Last round, it was not easy. They needed a series like that to show that they are ready for an opportunity like this. And Dallas, they took away probably the top contender in the West. Then they beat the team that everyone thought was going to go on because of how they were playing the playoffs. They're a team that, in a way, Dallas reminds me of Vegas from 2 years ago. They are the team that nobody thought was going to do as well, but you get the strong goaltending, you get the right team play, guys are stepping up at the right time, and that's usually what leads to success in these playoffs. So this is a Stanley Cup, I think, that's going to be very enjoyable if both teams are able to come together and play as they have played through the last 3 rounds.
You're exactly right as far as that comparison is concerned, David, because, and this is why I'll say it, they have a lot of players that have a lot to prove. And there's nothing that spoke to the Las Vegas team more than players who had a lot to prove. Mm-hmm. So, motivation definitely played a large part in Las Vegas's success last year, the year before this one. And then this one here, and I should say 2 years before. I mean, this is a team that made it to the Western Final twice in 3 years, and they're an expansion team. So, they had every advantage as far as being an expansion team. I don't buy into the brilliance of the organization as much as I buy into the fact that they were the only team in the expansion draft. They were given opportunities. The players that they could pick from were from a much shorter list than ever we saw before. And then they had all these other things that they could do: trade, upgrade, trade for a first round draft pick, not to pick a player, because teams were so desperate to keep their key personnel. So that was an advantage they had. Seattle is not going to get the same kind of opportunity, but Las Vegas is going to be on the sidelines, not losing anybody, David. So this is a team that could be 4 times in the Western Final. 3 times in 4 years, because they're protected by the draft, and they have an inherent advantage in the draft. So them losing was a big deal because everybody knows how good a team they are. Everybody knows, that this team has, let's face it, had a great opportunity to win. And that's what makes Dallas winning so great. And none of the goaltenders that were left of the 4, I think, maybe one. I'm sorry. In Tampa. Yes, of course. But the other 3 goaltenders weren't the number 1 goalies. Nope. So if you're a Leaf fan, and I'm sorry we're going back to Leafs, but we are Leaf-centric here. If you're a Leaf fan, there's a goalie out there, 3 out of 4 chances that'll get you into the conference final. So, it's not a question. In fact, they had their hands on one of them.
I will say maybe New York with Varlamov. He was kind of at a 1A, 1B situation. But yeah, I know Anton Khudobin. Everyone's kind of comparing him to Tim Thomas back in when he was with Boston. Mm-hmm. I mean, Robin Leonard, we know that the Leafs, had to finagle the cap to help Vegas acquire him. Maybe the Leafs didn't get enough back considering how well Leonard did to get them there.
Sure seems like it.
And yeah, it really. And I think this really is when people try to say what's the makeup of a Stanley Cup caliber team. What always gets overlooked in most cases is the guy between the pipes. Without that surefire goalie, Dallas at one point was in trouble when they put Ben Bishop back in, and they had to quickly yank him back and no, we gotta go with the other guy. And even with Vegas, when they put in Fleury, that situation was even more bizarre.
What about Vancouver and Markstrom going down?
Yep, and with them,
I mean, nothing proves. Sorry, I'm interrupting, but nothing proves where a goaltender can come out of nowhere. You know that's the thing about the goaltenders. That's why they're not paid as much as I think sometimes their value kind of Maybe because of what you're saying, I'm thinking that way. You sort of brainwashed me. We underestimate goaltenders because they're not paid that much, other than Price, right?
And now, what's funny is Carey Price we thought maybe was setting a new standard for goalies. Tuukka Rask was doing that. Henrik Lundqvist was kind of doing that. And then you get Sergei Bobrovsky, that $10 million contract, and he ended up being the reason why his team is not moving on in the playoffs. So,
Absolutely.
it's not money more so than it's making sure that guy has support. Because if Anton Khudobin is the number one goalie in Dallas without that real good, solid
There you go.
tandem, it's just not good enough. Even with Andre Vasilevsky, you know, he's a good goalie, but you need a guy with him to at least help you get there. Because I feel like the year that they did win, Vasilevsky had to do a lot of heavy lifting, and that weighs on a goalie. When your goalie lacks either the confidence or he's been overworked throughout the regular season, the playoffs are they're another season. In my opinion, the amount of wear and tear these players go through, it's way more in the playoffs at times than it is during the regular season. And I feel
Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry. The problem is that with goaltenders, again, some goaltenders are just asked to do a job. And then some goaltenders are asked to make humongous saves all through the playoffs. That burns you out. And that's why I think more than anything, why the National Hockey League now, it's like the National Football League. For a long time, you had one running back. That was good enough. But because of the games changing, now you have to have more than one running back. And I think in lockstep, the National Hockey League and has also the same issue where it's a pick 'em. You're not really sure you're going to be able to make it with one goaltender. So really what you need, and what Vancouver highlighted, what Dallas highlighted, what the Bruins have highlighted, what all these teams have highlighted is that you need to have a second goalie and maybe even a third goalie that can play goal for you in the playoffs. Now, what does that mean? Well, all it means is you got to be kind of lucky that the goaltender comes in with the right mentality. How have we seen that in the past couple of years? St. Louis won a Stanley Cup with a rookie goaltender. Why did they win? Well, a lot of people attributed it to his capacity to not let the largesse of the game impact how he played. In other words, he wasn't cowed by the challenge of playing in the Stanley Cup. Number one, that's what you need. So more than anything, we've learned that goaltenders are kind of weird, right? People say, they're kind of flaky, right? Not only that, but their mentality has to be special in those 16 wins that the team needs. And not that they make the 16-win contribution, but that they are there to make the contribution to bridge the number one or support the team when they need it.
No, exactly. I mean, it's too much. Have people thought that goaltenders, when I think about the Carey Prices of the world, Montreal is finally realizing that Carey Price just simply can't do it all on his own. They are finally realizing that after how many, they have tried. I will admit they have tried, but they just hadn't gotten that guy that they can be totally confident in. Because it's one thing to go and get a goalie that you think can be the backup to Carey Price, but you have to have confidence in that guy. You have to know that when Carey Price is down, there is no debate of whether the other guy can step in. Too often, I feel like teams are just like, we don't know if this guy can. You can't have that anymore in the NHL. Your backup. I feel like there's so many goalies out there. Others might disagree with me on that one, but I think there are quite a few goalies out there that can really step in when your team needs it. I feel like there's, teams either over evaluate the goaltending position and aren't willing to give guys the chance. I mean, I look at, how many teams have thrown away goal. At one point, Devin Dubnyk was a Montreal Canadian goaltender behind Carey Price. Devin Dubnyk was then let go for nothing, went to Minnesota, and was a Vezina caliber goaltender. How many times have we seen a situation like that? And I feel like Anton Khudobin, when he was with Boston, I said, they got a good one there in Boston. What happened? They let him go. They brought in Halak, who, again, was another goalie that a team thought, I don't think this guy is our
Another
guy.
Montreal connection too.
Another Montreal connection. Funny enough, more people were upset that Halak was let go than Price when
Absolutely, at the time.
And St. Louis is actually, I think, probably the prime example of when you finally get goaltending. That's really the key. You know, they had Halak, they had Jake Allen, they went and got Ryan Miller, then they tried Martin Brodeur. Until you finally find that guy that you have the full confidence in and say, this is our guy, that's, I think, that's the key for, you know, a team to take that next step.
I think goaltenders, David, are the literal term that's used capturing lightning in a bottle.
Yep.
That's who goaltenders are. They have to capture lightning in the bottle. And so what you have to have, it's the old thing. You know how you say you got to be lucky to be good to be lucky? Well, you need goaltenders that are good, that when the luck kicks in or the groove sets in, they can ride you quite a distance. But the clear message in this Stanley Cup final that we're going to get is we are going to see how tired Bobrovsky is. Is he tired?
Sorry, you mean Vasilevsky.
Vasilevsky, I'm sorry. I got Bobrovsky on the brain. Vasilevsky, you're right. To see how tired he is, right? And how important it is that Khudobin can play another series, or do they go back to Bishop? And does Bishop play the way that he can? Does Tampa have a goaltender that can come in case Vasilevsky looks kind of tired, right? And this is the time of year where now we've talked about the regular season, get into the playoffs. We've talked about being in the playoffs. We've talked about winning that series, winning that second series. Now it's down to 4 wins. Mm-hmm. You need 4 wins. So because you need 4 wins, that also means the opposition needs 4 wins. So there's no room for mistakes. You know, this series is going to be very intense. And additionally, the thing I really like about this series, it is going to start physical. It's going to be a physical series early. Tampa Bay made some changes. They brought Maroon in. They've got an ex-Leaf defenseman, Luke Richardson, there as well.
You mean Luke Schenn?
Luke Schenn, sorry. Got Richardson on the brain too. So yeah, Luke Schenn. Well, they're basically the same defenseman. But anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
But anyway, it's that kind of defenseman, right? They've got the physical response if it happens. Dallas, we know, will initiate a physical response. They had a little bit of a challenge against Vegas because Vegas had the tough guy, while Dallas does it by committee. But by coincidence, Tampa does it by committee now. And I don't think it's any coincidence that they've heightened their physicality and it has opened up their offense and their great players. And look what they've done without their captain, Steven Stamkos. And not only that, their best player, Point, was out. And he still, I don't think, is healthy. It looks like he has a groin injury that he was even attending to it during the last game that they were playing. So, this is Tampa is a team. Yes, great goaltending, but I think they have the kind of, a guy like Shattenkirk, whose career was literally shattered by too high a contract in Washington, leaving St. Louis, and he has found a home in Tampa, and he's a bit of a physical guy with a good shot. And this Tampa team looks a little different. They're ready to win the Cup. And Dallas is ready to take them on. I'm going to love the first couple of games. I'm telling you, the first game there's going to be a little body work going on in this game early. The finesse is not going to show up unless they get into an overtime or when it gets late in the game where you don't want to get a penalty. That's when the finesse will start to show up, whether it be in the first game, second game, through this whole series. But I think there's going to be some solid hitting. I can see up to 30, 35 hits per team during these games.
Yeah, this has been, I think, a big change in Tampa this year is that you're not gonna, a lot of talented teams. What have we heard? If you play them a little physical, you can try to frustrate them and get an edge on them. Tampa realized you need to eliminate that as a potential problem, and they have done that. I mean, they brought in a guy like Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, Luke Schenn. I mean, if there's a guy I'm pulling for to win a Stanley Cup, as a guy who follows and loves the Leafs, it is Luke Schenn. Shattenkirk was brought in on a cheap deal because he wanted to win. Patrick Maroon, he scored that big goal for St. Louis to get them into that finals. He's the guy that will drop the gloves if he needs to. And even Dallas, they're a skilled team, but they're a hard-nosed team as well. I mean, their defense, they lost a guy like Roman Polak, who is funny because losing him,
another ex-Leaf.
You think losing him would get rid of some of that physical edge? That hasn't been the case. A guy like Jamie Alexiak, brother of Penny Alexiak, big physical guy who's got a little more confidence offensively as well. Miro Heiskanen is a guy that many are pegging as the Stars' Conn Smythe candidate, and he's had a booming playoffs. Esa Lindell, both these teams have very physical guys, but then what I like about these two teams, they got the physicalness, and then the Stars have Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Alexander Radulov, those skilled guys. Tampa's got Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov. If Steven Stamkos comes back, I mean, this just takes this. It adds so much intrigue to the series. I don't think he comes back for Game 1 tonight, but I think you will see him at some point in this series because there's no games left. You're
right about that. Except you didn't mention one name to me that's very important, and that's Corey Perry on Dallas. This is a guy that knows how to win a cup. This is a guy who was on a team that looked to be dominant through the years, and then we saw what happened to Anaheim. The reason why he's gone, he goes to a team that, has been disappointing. I mean, this year they started as a team. We talked earlier about the owner taking the two top players to task. Jamie Benn, you mentioned two of the players. You're overpaid. You should be doing more. And that team brought Corey Perry in, and that's the kind of experience they have in this playoff that I think is really, really important. We talk about teams having goaltenders, very important. Your goaltender has to be great. We both agree about that. But I also think experience in the Stanley Cup Final, not just the playoffs, in the Stanley Cup Final is going to come in real handy. And when it comes to Corey Perry, he can explain to the guys what it takes. That's something that really you have to play it to know what it's all about. You really do.
And the thing with Tampa and even not even Corey Perry, Joe Pavelski,
Absolutely.
A former captain of the Sharks who finally got the Sharks there in 2016 with the Sharks, and they lost to the Penguins, but that was a guy who knows, hey, it's not easy once you get there, and you can't just be satisfied with getting there. You have to push that extra gear. I think with Tampa too, this is a team where a lot of the guys from 2015 when they lost to Chicago, they're still there. Victor Hedman, Tyler Johnson, I believe Alex Killorn was on that team. They've got guys who
even Stamkos
as well. These are guys who are there, and they know what the heartbreak is like,
Right. Looking forward to that other chance, that next chance.
Yes.
There's nothing that teaches players more directly than making it finally to the Stanley Cup and losing, in as far as building the desire to actually get there again. And that's as important as having been there and won, I think, except for the little bit of confidence that you might have more having won it than having lost it. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's that much different between the two.
No, I think there's a lot of teams where they get there, they lose on. They says, well, if we can get there again, we think we know what we need to do this time around.
And what does Tampa have to do to win? If we fast forward, one of the teams wins 4 games, circles the ice with the cup. What do you think Tampa has to do to get there first? And then we'll talk about Dallas.
I think discipline is number one, because Dallas feeds off of undisciplined play. Power plays have been a big thing for Dallas. They're 27.3%. They're 5th in the league in power plays this postseason. I think Tampa, they're a good team, but you do not want to take penalties. I think that got Vegas in a lot of trouble in the last series, and Dallas feeds off of that. Dallas is a team that can wait around if they need to, wait for that chance to pounce. Power plays have become their thing of how they pounce. So I think Tampa needs to remain disciplined. And and I think the series against the Islanders really have prepared them for this one against Dallas, because the Islanders are a team that kind of waits back. They'll let you take as many shots on them as you want, but you really gotta find different ways to score, and that's going to be key for Tampa, is finding different ways to break through that really tough Stars defense and the goaltender, who is, a top goaltender in these playoffs.
If the Tampa Bay Lightning are the team that circles the ice with the Stanley Cup on their shoulders, it is, in my opinion, there's a couple of things that are the reason why it happened. And first of all, goaltending. Vasilevsky is going to prove what everybody knows already, but as you said earlier, when it came to Price and it comes to other players, you can be as great as you can be in everyone's mind, but until you win a Stanley Cup, the greatness level does not get you that high. You can be great during the regular season, but nothing enhances the definition of being great than winning a Stanley Cup. Steven Stamkos won't have to play, but if he does play, the offense of Tampa Bay is going to be very important. But I agree with you. They won this series. If they won, they won because their penalty killing kept Dallas off the score sheet. And opposite to that, their penalty killing was able to overcome the penalty killing of the Dallas Stars and their great goaltending that they've had with Khudobin. For Dallas to win the Cup, the biggest thing that they're going to need is they're going to need to slow the game down. And I think I agree with you 100% that this is a team that's more about opportunity and being an opportunist. And nothing speaks to being an opportunist than ensuring that the opposition doesn't have that many opportunities. So they have to be the one that gets the chances to make a difference while stifling Tampa Bay. They'll have to, and it's going to be this to me is the most important thing that Dallas is going to have to do, in my opinion. They're going to have to make Hedman a non-factor, because he, to me, is the most important player on Tampa that's going to kill you. He is the most important player, and he plays a heck of a lot of ice time, and he is a big, rangy guy, and he can handle all the ice time. And, man, when he's at the point and he has the puck, look out. They're going to have to cancel him somehow. I think
Victor Hedman is, for when you're looking at Dallas, if you're looking at a guy like people look at Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, your easiest target to try to minimize his impact is Victor Hedman. In Game 6 against the Islanders, you could tell he did not want the Lightning to go to a Game 7, and he brought it in Game 6. Yeah, he is a guy that can easily change a game. He eats the big minutes for Tampa. You're gonna have to get physical with him. He's a big body, but Dallas has those big bodies. If I'm Corey Perry, I'm looking at Victor Hedman and saying, I'm not making life easy for you. And I think that's going to be something that Dallas is going to look to work towards, because I think Dallas has maybe their depth might be a little bit better on defense. They got to make sure that they attack that top pairing so that the trickle down effect is really something that Tampa's going to have to work around, because I think Victor Hedman is a guy that can change a series, as you said, with one shot.
And we shouldn't soft pedal Niskanen. He is a less experienced version of Hedman.
Yes.
He has the ability to be to Tampa what Hedman is for Dallas. He has shown that he is a stud defenseman, and Tampa's going to have to pay attention to him almost as much as Dallas has to pay attention to Hedman. Not quite as much, but he's going to be a factor if you let him.
Oh, for sure. he's the reason why Dallas has gone so far. I really do believe that. And we were talking about how goaltenders can really change the series. A guy like Heiskanen can definitely do that. Hedman has proven that with Tampa. And I think Heiskanen is actually Dallas's best player. Some people might think I'm getting a little overzealous. I think he is their best player.
He is at this point a player who hasn't earned the respect, broadly in the league. So there's that advantage. To me, that's an advantage. When you're not understood as being great, that is when you can do your most damage. It's after you get respect. This is, again, Leaf centric. Once the Leaf team got a lot of respect, their players and their salary and all that stuff, it got a lot harder to win for that team. And it gets a lot harder to be good as an individual when you get that lateral respect, uniformly in the league. It becomes a lot harder to play. You're beginning to play more in a closet. You're beginning to play with a lot less room. And to take it back to this series, that's what's going to happen here. You don't make it to the Stanley Cup Final if your system defensively isn't effective.
No, it really doesn't. If you have those breakdowns defensively, you put yourself in a really hard spot. I thought Dallas was in trouble when they played Calgary.
Absolutely.
Those two teams are trading offensively. One team was going to have to clamp it down, defensively, and Dallas eventually did it. It helps when you have a goaltender like Khudobin who is stealing games for you, like he did the last few rounds. Tampa, I think, is going to dominate play against Dallas. That is their game. Dallas just has to make sure that they don't get stuck trying to trade chances with Tampa.
That's not going to be that you're 100% right there. They should know that going in.
Exactly.
Yeah, they should know that. Dallas, on the other hand, the advantage that they're going to have is that Tampa likes to press in the end zone, in the opposition zone. They love to press. That can be a dangerous proposition because Dallas has a couple of speedy guys that can really, get to the other end of the ice very quickly. And also, those long passes, that Heiskanen can make, and a couple of Alexiak showed that he could do it too. We saw a couple of beautiful passes that sent Dallas players in alone. So when you're a team that presses and possession in the opposition zone like Tampa, you got to be careful those quick breaks, and that's the opportunistic side of, I think, Dallas that you're talking about.
Oh, very much so. I mean, teams that take advantage of their opportunities they're the ones who usually go on to win these sort of games, and experience is part of it as well. Dallas and Tampa both have the experience, so it's going to be a matter of which one of the guys who has the experience, the veteran, is going to be able to keep the guys in check, the frustration levels to a minimum, and when needed and when the team is down, can elevate their game to make things easier for their team.
We talked about Dallas being a team that when the season started, were not a favorite. Talk about the fact that what about their coach too? They have a new coach. We've seen this the past few years where rookie coaches can get you to the Stanley Cup. And it's not something just related to the cap years. This goes back to McNeil in Montreal as a rookie, won the Stanley Cup. It does happen, right? That teams can win. As far as coaching is concerned, you've got on Tampa's side a guy with a lot of experience, and then you have a guy that's been waiting for years to make it to this point. What do you think as far as coaching is concerned?
I mean, you got one coach who's coaching for a job. You got another coach who's had a lot of, he's had to reel his team from a very tough spot. He's been there before. You lose this one, John Cooper starts to get some heads start to turn on him, And so these are coaches both with something to prove. One guy I feel like has done enough to earn himself a full-time job. Another one deserves the chance to I think he's ready for this moment. He realizes what he needs to do with his team this time around. And I think I give the edge still to Tampa because I know Bonus has been around for a while, but John Cooper is also a guy that has the experience and I think the motivation to let his team kind of do what it needs to do.
The word symbiosis is very important, and the symbiotic relationship, in other words, how well the coach works with the players, is a large factor. It really doesn't matter how many years they've been there. On one side, you've got Tampa has a coach they've had for years. On the other side, you have a coach in Dallas that just basically started this year as a recovery from a real tough situation. Well, it was fun doing this, David. Thank you for handling it technically. Without, of course, your technical savvy, we wouldn't be doing this show. He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you, David, for doing all this.
We got to do one last thing, though. Who are we picking?
Okay.
Who are we picking?
Oh,
who are you
okay.
picking?
I'm gonna go with Tampa.
Okay, I'm going with Tampa as well. I think Dallas, as good as they are, I think Tampa is the better team overall. It's whether or not the rest that Dallas has, hopefully rest doesn't turn into rust.
Yeah, and this series is going to be very interesting. I'm picking Tampa just simply because I only think touching the trophy needs to be put to bed.
Yes.
The conference trophy.
Exactly.
I'll stand for a reason.
There you go.
He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching this Stanley Cup preview. We'll see you again next time.